Beautiful. What's going on, Wesley?
What's up, my man? How are you?
Uh, it's always the fun of Instagram Live. You get started, and then there's the
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
then,
yeah. How many buttons can I push before it works?
well, it's the grand equalizer. I feel like of everybody on the internet. It's like no matter how famous you are, I'm not famous, but no matter how famous you are, you're always going to start off with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
what's going on, man. It's so good to see you. Thank you for joining.
I know, man. It's really great to see you. Obviously, it's been since Chicago's wind up, since we've gotten the FaceTime. Met up with Gabe once in between, which was great. And yeah, we're slated for what, 2.5 weeks out now.
Something like that. Well, before we get started, I know who you are. I was introduced to you by our mutual friend Brandon from Passion Fine Jewelry. But for some folks who don't know, can you tell me just a little bit about Standard H?
Yeah, so based in California, San Diego specifically. Oh, nice. I'm behind you. So yeah, so basically it's an apparel and accessories brand like rooted in automotive inspiration, but obviously there's a lot of overlap with watches from an enthusiasm standpoint, as well as some of the designs and stuff. Just the attention to detail and stuff is like kind of the main thread of the population that loves cars and watches, right? Like the mechanical aspects as well of cars and watches. And I wanted to present an automotive inspired brand of apparel, but in an understated way. So that's what began the brand. It has been fascinating to see it kind of take off in the watch community and the collector groups. And I couldn't be happier and more thrilled with the community, frankly.
Well, you make one thing that I have to say I need to find a way to justify the purchase of, which I think is just the mantra of the watch community.
Yeah.
But it's that absolutely awesome ammunition box watch case that you have.
Yeah.
Not to like hype you up for 1 second, but can you describe that? Because oh my god.
Okay. So I like things that are different, or at least present. And I like the wow factor and kind of anything that solicits a double take, like on down to my logo. Doesn't have the 1, 2, 3, 4 on it, but people, it solicits the double take quite honestly all the time. And I just love that aspect. And I was thinking about storage because as a watch guy myself, I'm like, well, what's a cool watch case out there? And I also like the Land Rover Defender, and I love a double entendre. So it was like kind of this perfect intersection of, I was like, I saw a 50 caliber ammo can randomly. I don't even remember where I was.
How does one see that randomly?
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
just wondering.
Is like sometimes like Ace Hardware or like Harbor Freight, they'll sell plastic ammo cans.
Okay. This is very American centric, clearly.
Yeah, of course. And in California, it's kind of surprising actually. But at any rate, I saw a 50 caliber ammo can. I was like, huh, like defense, military, defense, defender watch box. I was like, I bet this thing could hold. So then I kind of created with cut foam, high density foam. I prototyped what the interior could look like. And then, so basically it holds 8 watches. So it's 50 caliber ammo can with 2 trays. Each tray holds 4 watches. They stack inside. And then the inside part of the lid, I was like, well, what can I design to sort of protect the top of the watches from hitting the metal lid? Well, again, being a car guy, I loved sort of that diamond embroidered insert in, say, like a G-Wagon. I think the Koenigsegg Agera R has the same sort of diamond pattern in the seats. I was like, that would be really, really cool. So I tested it via foam, like I said, for the trays, and then released it primarily through the use of poplar wood trays clad in Alcantara suede, which again, tying in the automotive inspiration by way of the Alcantara found in like the roof line or the headliner of like a Porsche.
So part of what I love, so first of all, that's awesome. Part of what I loved about that when we were in Chicago, and we'll talk about WindUp in a second, was you talked to me a little bit about how you ship the thing, which is that it arrives in this incredible wooden crate.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you kind of have to crowbar the thing open.
Yeah. So I was like, I can't just ship this box in a cardboard box. Like, it just wouldn't be right. And again, don't know where I was. I was just trying to take to the nth degree of like what it could be military inspired. And I was thinking of like, I mean, how do they ship stuff in the military, right? They ship them in crates oftentimes and drop them out the back of like, a C-130 or something. I don't know. Like, and so
Which is
I was
totally
like,
how you deliver this watch box, I assume.
well, yeah, no, exactly. I fly a C-130 over your house and we dump it out via parachute. No, but
Sounds efficient.
hang on. Let me close this door. I'm not at home right now. Hang on.
No problem.
Okay, I don't know if that helps or not, but so basically I hand build these wooden crates in my garage, and then I spray paint like with very sort of military looking writing, I guess, like on the side, standard H, and then I do ship it with a little pry bar. So it's all hammered shut, and
That's awesome.
the little pry bar to get it open, and then I have custom cut foam that's outside of the box within the crate to protect the watch box.
See, this is part of what I love about any business that I think is focused on an enthusiast of any kind, right? It could be watches, it could be knives, it could be whatever, pens, is once you start going down this rabbit hole of like what the story is of the object that you want, what the story of the object is that you want to tell.
Yeah.
How far down that rabbit hole do you want to go from an experiential standpoint? When Gabe and I were working on the Urwork, which I'm wearing today, that we did last year, we went down this kind of crazy rabbit hole, similarly on packaging as well, where it had its own custom box that was all evocative around the way specific gauges, for example, were mounted into mechanical displays of spacecraft prior to glass cockpits that are now essentially the norm. And then you start going down this like crazy rabbit hole of like what it means to experience opening something, what it means to experience holding it. When I used to work for Apple, for example, one of the things that the product designers talked about was the friction of the box when you open an iPhone, which, by the way, if anyone wants to, this is a fun drinking game. You can spend, it's 3.5 seconds. It's how long it takes to open the box, which is specifically mathematically determined as the correct amount of anticipation for a product.
The anticipation, yeah.
Yes, that is the quantifiable metric for anticipation. So when I think about like whether it's jacking open a box or whether it's opening something and seeing what the experience of that is and how it's evocative of the overall story or what have you, it's always interesting to see how somebody thinks about that from a design perspective. Which
I guess the drop test would be tested at 3.6 seconds because you just
exactly.
Well,
naturally. There you go. Proprietary information released. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
By the way, given that we're two watch guys on a call, before we get into the fun stuff about WindUp, got to ask you, what's on your wrist?
Oh, right now, 36 millimeter OP no date, my wedding watch. Yeah, I'm here in Utah helping a buddy with his business open a store, actually. So I was here for some of the build out and such, and I only brought one watch, and this is the watch I'd had on for like the day or two prior to the trip. So it's what I got on today.
Well, I was waiting for you to say, like, this is the watch that I wore when I opened my business.
No, because my business is older than my relationship with my wife.
Nice. All right, fair enough. So there you go. One of the things that I find really fascinating about WindUp, and I think, the conversation that we're talking about, I think, exemplifies that.
Yeah.
If you've never been to a WindUp before, it's remarkable because so much, especially over the last couple of years, I mean, Lord knows that we all feel this way. And yeah, Adrian, agreed. The one watch you need.
Cheers, Adrian.
So many things about WindUp are unique in that it is a warm and welcoming community. And like so much of like what we have experienced over the last few years, I mean, God knows everyone's sick of hearing this crap, but like we've been locked in our rooms. We've been locked in our homes. And it's been really special to be able to come together and to meet people. And part of what I think is so remarkable about WindUp as a watch event, regardless of whether you're talking San Francisco, now Chicago, and upcoming New York, is the lack of pretension in that room. And, my first WindUp was in San Francisco when I used to live in the Bay Area. And I remember walking in and being able to do things that you can't do now, like just walk up and buy an Anordain. That was fun. Right. But also being able to meet people who I had a lot of respect for, still have a lot of respect for, who are now friends. you, Chase from Oak and Oscar, for example. These are folks who I'd only ever seen on the internet or I'd only ever read about, and I never had the chance to actually interact with. And for me, it really was an exciting moment. And Chicago, which was my first experience doing it as a vendor versus as someone who who's just an enthusiast attending, was a really eye-opening experience too, to just be able to meet people and to connect with them. So I'm really curious. I think you've been a sponsor for more than me, correct? Like Chicago was not your first windup, right?
No. Chicago, in fact, was my first windup.
Oh, okay. So we're on the same page.
Any reason whatsoever. Yeah. So and it's kind of funny how that unfolded for me, at least, because New York is kind of a second home for me. And like, I'm always excited to go to New York. And I had signed up last spring for the windup in New York first. Somebody bailed, I don't know who, but somebody bailed on Chicago. So they asked if I wanted to go in their place. Now, granted, not for free or anything, but like, just they had a booth to sell. So I was like, yeah, let me do this. And the cool thing too it was Chicago. I hadn't been there in a long time, and I was excited to go back. Got to go to Wrigley, which was awesome. And because New York is slated to be an even larger show, and by all accounts, I'm assuming the largest so far ever for windup.
I believe so.
Chicago really did serve as like a really great sort of, trial run for me, because it was also the first time I'd ever done a trade show as a brand. And so
us too.
All of it was brand new for me. Yeah. Much like you guys. So it was, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned the lack of pretension as like keystone, like number one thing mentioned, because that was exactly what I was going to say as like my first sort of introduction and understanding of the aura, if you will. It was, it's just so friendly. It's so welcoming. People are going to check out other people's booths and like really like just, and not judge the product. It's like it's the epitome of enthusiasm, right? And it's all under one roof.
That's a perfect strap line. I love that.
Yeah. And so
there you go, Blake. That's a freebie.
Yeah. Yeah. I want mailbox money though, residuals for that. So for me, like, it was all brand new and it couldn't have gone better. Like, my barometer for success for that trial run for me, if I even want to call it a trial run at this point, can I make this trip worth it monetarily? Like, meaning, can I at least just like make back my money, right? Like, just make back my money. And because the exposure was a driving force, right? I'm still very much a new brand. I know I said,
we lost your audio, bud. There you are.
Sorry, where did
we lost you at you're a new brand.
Okay, well, sorry. That was actually James Helms from Worn and Wound calling me. So basically, I'm a new brand. It was a thrill a minute to be in Chicago. It was very successful for me from a like first time trial. Like, granted, my expectations were here, and they went to there, right? So New York, I'm just pumped about.
So we'll come around to it in a moment, because I want to talk a little bit about what you're planning at WindUp, and we'll talk a little bit about us too. But I'm going to skip to the chase here. I'm from New York. My partner Gabe is also from New York. We've met. We met in the principal's office in 7th grade, as is the classic way of all founders, I'm sure. So I got to ask you, as a visitor, what are your top 2 things you got to do in New York City?
Eat. The restaurants, right?
Can you be ever so more specific?
Yeah, New York City. Well, I've grown to love the restaurants Missy and Lilia, both in Brooklyn.
All right.
They're both Italian. They have a new pizza by the slice spot also.
Which is a very New York thing.
New
York thing.
Yeah, the New York slice. And you can get whole pies there too, but it's called Feeney,
Hmm.
Fini. And I think because the Missy's business partner is a guy named Sean Feeney. And if anybody listens to like the JJ Redick podcast, for example, if NBA heads out there, they talk about Lilia. And actually, that was my introduction to Lilia. It was through JJ's podcast. And yeah, phenomenal. I mean, they're all three Brooklyn haunts, but you know, I do have a long running tradition of breakfast in Soho. With a good friend of mine, Jennifer, we always go to oh God, how am I blanking? Like
Because you're on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God.
I'll save you on this one.
Yeah,
because
thanks.
I'm thinking about it now. So as a New Yorker, I feel like I grew up very much like I mean, I'm a New York Jew, all of the archetype, like think Woody Allen. That's
Yeah.
what my parents' apartment looks like. Like that's the
About-
truth. And I had the great pleasure, and we'll talk about this in a moment, of taking the founder of the Fears Watch Company, of whom we are an authorized dealer, and we're going to be representing at WindUp in New York City. I had the great pleasure of taking him to my parents' house and going to one of the old school New York Jewish delis called Barney Greengrass,
Okay.
otherwise known as the Sturgeon King.
All right.
Now, yes, I have a hat that literally says the Sturgeon King. It's amazing. Nobody knows what's going on outside of New York. Anyway, I love sending people or taking people who have never been to New York City to this place. It's a perfect example of New York culture, because you go in, like the wait staff are I don't want to say that they're rude, but they can't really be bothered. Yeah, it's like like they're going to shove you into a seat. They're going to tell you what they think you should have. They're going to remind you after you ordered that it's cash only, always helpful. And the bill is inexplicably high. The food is stupendously good, but it's a classic New York Jewish fare, which is to say, and I remember taking my wife for the first time for this food. It tastes amazing. It just doesn't look very good.
Oh, I see.
So you'll get some like pickled herring and cream sauce, and like I think that's delicious. But for somebody who's never seen it before, it looks like gray fish and white sauce, and it's like, ugh. And there are these moments, but they're very New York, because it's just like, this is the food, you're going to eat it, this is how you're going to pay for it, now get the hell out,
100%.
And I loved watching Nicholas, because if you've ever met Nicholas, he's an incredibly elegant man, and a really sweet human, but like, very, very elegant. And like in this position, in this like super brusque, if your coffee spills on you, it's your own damn fault kind of place, was kind of amazing. Which is actually a perfect transition, because I'd love to tell you, because I don't think I've told you about this, a little bit about what we're doing at WindUp, and I'd love to hear a little bit about what you're doing. Sure. I think I told you when I saw you in Chicago, our entire business has been based around this idea of creating collaborative watches. But one thing that's happened as a happy circumstance of that is that we've ended up meeting really wonderful people like you, like Nicholas, like others, who are doing things that are either directly related to the watch world or tangentially related to the watch world that we want to be able to champion. And the simple reality of collaborative work, and I think we were just talking about this a couple minutes ago on the phone, is that it takes a really long time, and to make something that you're really proud of and to do something that you really want to bring into the world. For us, it's usually anywhere between 18 to 24 months for a single project to come to life. Yeah. Meanwhile, there are all of these people doing really interesting things that we also want to be able to support, which has led us sort of unexpectedly to this idea of retailing some watches and some brands we really love to the general public outside of the context of collective as a community of collectors. And the first brand that we sort of dipped our toes in with that is our friend Josh Shapiro. And now we just became an authorized dealer of Fears. And there's some other brands that are going to come over the next 6 to 8 months. But Fears for us really was a perfect example, because it was a friend, somebody that we love, making watches that aren't necessarily readily available here in the United States,
sure,
that are, in our mind, a hidden treasure, and that we want to be able to deliver. So for the first time, we're going to be on site at WindUp retailing Fears. We're going to have the full line of Fears Brunswicks, as well as a couple of other watches from some of his other lines available. You'll be able to look at every single one of them. We'll even have some in stock, which is really exciting, because I think one challenge that we saw in Chicago So that it was right in the middle of the year when the supply chain was at its worst. So,
Right.
there were a lot of watches to see, not a lot of watches to buy.
Right.
So I'm optimistic that not only for us at Fears, but also, or with Fears rather, but also other brands that are exhibiting there will be able to send you home with really, really awesome watches.
Yeah, totally.
So that's going to be a positive. And then finally, I know I'm going to see you there, and obviously everyone on this live or seeing it later is invited. We're also going to be doing a low-key get-together on the second day of the event called Wind Down at WindUp, which is going to be with us and Worn and Wound, and we're just inviting folks to be able to come together and spend some time with some beers and drinks and watches and hang out at the end of the event. If anyone wants to join us for that, you are more than welcome. The RSVP link is link in bio, so just drop in there and say hi. So we're really, really excited about that. And that's going to be really new for me because our last experience at WindUp was not retail oriented.
Right.
It was more just an exhibit. We were showcasing our collective collaborations. We weren't really discussing or selling anything.
Right.
So this will be new for us. I'd love to know what you're doing there other than coming to Wind Down. And what's new? What am I going to get to see?
Yeah, so I debuted a couple of items in Chicago, one being the lightweight sweatshirt.
Is that the one I bought?
Yes, exactly. You bought it, yeah. So that puppy sold out. So that was a positive problem. But I keep getting messages is like, when is this thing coming back in stock? I can't wait for the XK sweatshirt. I can't wait. And so hopefully that thing will be done by the time WindUp starts. If not, it'll be like within the week, I suspect. By
the way, for folks who aren't familiar, this is like if you live in a somewhat warm climate like I do, I live in Southern California, this thing is awesome.
Oh, thanks.
I lived in this sweatshirt until I spilled tomato soup on it, which is the reality of attempting to serve a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old tomato soup and grilled cheese. So my fault, not yours. Please continue.
Well, there are others. Jason Heaton had motor oil spilled on his Avanti.
That's so much cooler, though.
So cool. It still has the scent, he said. Like, even through the wash, he's like, it's the faintest oil smell. I was like, man, that's wonderful. This is music, really.
Just much cooler.
So, yeah, there will be more that will hopefully be free of any red sauce or soup or anything like that. So, so those will be back in stock. So I'm excited about that. The other thing I had in Chicago that wasn't out yet was the Targa Florio jacket, which is basically if you were to take a pea coat, make it lightweight cotton, and then chop it off at the waist. And that's basically what the Targa Florio jacket is. It's a lightweight, double-breasted jacket that actually I think looks way better open. But, you can kind of pop the collar a little bit and get stylish with it. But the interior, more importantly, is fabric that I've had custom made. Again, bringing in the automotive inspiration. It is the same exact tartan plaid from my Volkswagen GTI seats. So it's the exact same pattern. So the entire jacket is lined in the GTI plaid, which is black, red, and gray, and with like a little tiny bit of white within the plaid. It's military green. I'm also offering it in a dark blue, navy, and that's lined in like a blue variant of the same plaid pattern. So
not only does that sound awesome, I feel like you just need to wind people up after they buy that from you and just send them right over to Autodromo.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And that's part of the reason why I had it cropped, mainly, is so that you could drive in it. So you're not sitting on the jacket. I've had the samples from months, obviously. I had the samples in Chicago. It garnered far more attention in Chicago than I ever bargained for. So I'm super excited about the release of those. Those should be out in time for the show as well. So
awesome.
Those are my two biggest announcements. Other than that, just being in New York, living that life for, the better part of a week, interface with everybody, going to the parties and the dinners and just catching up and really just getting to network, really, because this watch community has been so quintessential to the growth of my brand. And honestly, keep it silent, but I much prefer the watch community over the car community 99% of the time, just because it's so much more well. It is it's the lack of pretension, and maybe that's the wind up or the worn and wound aspect of it. I'm not sure. I've yet to figure it out. I don't really care to figure it out. I just care to keep staring it down the barrel and continuing to
No,
grow
it's a good point. I mean, one of the things that really struck me about wind up, because obviously, like when I went, as an enthusiast, I went for a couple hours on one day,
Yeah.
and in Chicago, I was there the whole time, except for breakdown, as Gabe will very readily point out.
I just, oh, you bounced. Yeah.
Exactly. Had to go. But one of the things that I found really remarkable was the diversity of collectors. I mean, there were Grand Seikos as far as the eyes could see, but there were, and there were plenty of wonderful representation of enthusiasts, representing brands that were there that they were excited to see.
Sure.
Lots of Anordains, Christopher Wards, Farrers, Formex, like awesome watches, all of them. But then there were guys who were showing up wearing Romain Gaultier Continuums,
Yeah.
and you never knew. It wasn't a matter of it wasn't flex. It was genuine. It was genuine excitement and enjoyment.
Yeah.
And that that really got me excited, because you never knew who you were talking to in terms of what their taste was, their interests were, and what their collections were. And I mean, I've never been one to judge anybody by the value of their collection. I'm always much more interested in like the curiosity and the interest of their collection.
Right.
And I met one gentleman who came up and was a watch painter, and showed me all of these incredible works that he'd done painting, watches that he'd loved. I met this one guy who was a hardcore indie collector, was wearing a Grubel 4C and was carrying, a new Mosier that he got, And I also met plenty of dudes who came in that wore modded Seikos that were just ludicrously cool. And to me, like all of that is equally awesome. And that unique melting pot that Warren and Wound has put together is really something special. So I would say, like, even if you're showing up and like you don't have a card with you, you're not going to buy a watch. Like, that's not the reason you're there. If you just want to like meet interesting people and you want to grow your community outside of the bubble that we sometimes exist within on Instagram or in our WhatsApp groups or what have you, it's an incredible opportunity to do it.
Yeah.
Which reminds me, you left off one of the most important things about visiting New York City.
Oh God,
most important. With your morning coffee,
okay,
you must pay for $1.99 bacon, egg, and cheese, which is one word: bacon, egg, and cheese. It can be procured at any bodega in New York City.
That's right.
It is only acceptable on I wouldn't want to call it a crusty bun because that's way too highfalutin. It's on a bun,
right?
And it is the way.
That is the way.
And if you pay more than $1.99, maybe $2.50 inflation.
Yeah.
You're out of your mind. But that is the way.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's funny. And just to go back for 2 seconds and piggyback on kind of what you were saying about the crowd that in the attendance, I'm much more interested in the why you have what you have rather than just the what you have, right?
100%.
So like, yeah, you could be double wristing and it's not Apple Watch for health reasons and a Grubel Force over here. It's Grubel Force here and like a
You mean this is to show my heart attack from buying this?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's what interests me. Those are the stories that I like, shameless plug. And also part of the reason I do my podcast as well is just so I could talk about the things that people don't often talk about. Like if you're across the room, yeah, I can tell you're a watch guy because, you've got that watch on your wrist. But let's talk about why you have it on your wrist and things like that. So, nothing's better than that at WindUp and meeting the people for sure. I mean, without the people, it's not possible, obviously. And none of this is possible without people. So, I mean, it's beautiful.
Agreed. And I think that actually gives us a perfect opportunity to bring this to an end with one thing.
Okay, let's shoot.
What are the top 2 exhibitors other than me or you that you are excited to see at WindUp New York?
You know what? I can't wait to see Zodiac.
Did you see that new meteorite dial diver?
Well, this is the thing, right? Like, keep coming out with stuff that I haven't seen in person, and like I'm dying to see it. So there's that. The other thing that I did not see in Chicago all weekend, and of course I love Bradley. I'm always talking about Autodromo. You mentioned Bradley earlier. Anordain, honestly, because I have yet to see one in person, which is
really
crazy. Yeah, exactly. And I never made it to their booth in Chicago. So I'm dying to go buy Anordain in New York.
Super nice humans. I only own one Anordain now. Full disclosure, I sold my first one. Sold it on eBay to someone who said they bought it for their husband for their wedding, which I thought was really sweet.
Oh, that's
but I bought the OT podcast edition, which I think of as the Simpson. It's like the Simpson watch. It's it's basically I bought the white matte with
the
soft
white
pink,
yeah.
Right, and then that teal. And I just I'm a huge Simpsons fan, so I just think of it as my Simpsons watch. But it's absolutely gorgeous, and that almost doesn't give it enough credit for how absolutely incredible the craftsmanship is. In fact, so much so that a regional director for a massive international brand texted me a couple days ago and was more excited about the fact that he had just gotten his allocation after waiting a year and a half for an Anordain than any of the watches that he sells. And I thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. So that is as inside as it gets.
That's so good. I love that.
And I guess I shouldn't let myself off the hook.
I
am super excited to see Vertex in New York City. Cool. If nobody's ever met Don Cochran before, who is the refounder of that brand, you are in for a treat. He is an absolutely amazing human being. And the Vertex in general makes incredible watches. Their new diver is absolutely insane. So if you've never had the chance to check that out, it's incredible. And that's on top of their standard field watch and their mono pusher chronograph, which, if I'm not mistaken, and if someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, or Don can, but I believe that was the first appearance of that Sellita mono pusher chrono, and I think it was essentially done in partnership with Vertex to get it to market. So pretty cool. It is a pretty excellent example of like businesses helping businesses to bring something pretty unique to the market. Sure. And then, you know what? I am like 100% converted. I'm a Christopher Ward disciple.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I hung out with those dudes in Chicago, and I don't think I fully understood the brand. And like I literally came home, I bought their they make an absolutely, I'm probably so sick of me saying this. Like I bought their I think for $1,200 they make this absolutely beautiful COSC certified automatic fully forged carbon watch with a telescoping crown.
Okay, I know the one
you're talking about. The strap is heavier than the watch, which is amazing. And so far as I know, the only other watch you can buy with a telescoping crown is a $50,000 Omega. So you're really getting a lot of design. And I mean, and that's aside from the fact that the design is beautiful. So you're getting this ludicrous value, this incredible design, and I guess a relatively heavy strap for an absolutely incredible watch made by like just some of the nicest humans. And I guess you were alluding to this earlier, but part of what makes WindUp so great, and I think this community is so great, is you can find a watch and you really fall in love with the watch, and then you get to meet the maker. I felt this way about Fairer too. You know, you get to meet them, and you're like, you guys are wonderful.
Yeah.
And there's that extra element of it, you know, where now you don't just love the product, you also are like excited about the brand.
It's like it's like Ford.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah,
Dude.
It's almost better than taking a manufacturer's tour because you're meeting the people behind the manufacturing. So it's like that to me is just like paramount when you talk about enthusiasm.
Well, on that, I'll leave it with this. We can't wait to meet you. I cannot wait to see you. And if you come by and see us, have pity on us and bring us some food because we're all super hungry.
That's right. And
that was like my big takeaway from WindUp. It's like bring snacks.
Right. Yes. But, well, thank you for the opportunity to chat, man. It's great to see you again, and see you in a couple of weeks, which is even better.
I can't wait. Talk to you soon, my friend.
Okay, buddy.
And thanks for tuning in, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.